once was a dollhouse, old and forgotten, hidden away in the attic of an old Victorian mansion. It had been there for decades, covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs, waiting for someone to discover it once more. One day, a family moved into the mansion, and the youngest daughter, Emily, found the dollhouse while exploring the attic. It was a beautiful house, with tiny furniture and intricate details. Emily couldn't wait to play with it and begged her parents to let her keep it. Her parents were hesitant at first, not wanting to disturb the old dollhouse, but eventually, they relented, and Emily was thrilled. She spent hours playing with the dolls, moving them around the rooms, and creating her own little world. But strange things began to happen at night. Emily would hear tiny footsteps in her room, and when she woke up, she would find the dolls scattered around her bed, as if they had been moving on their own. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but as the nights went on, the activity grew more and more intense. One night, Emily woke up to find the dolls standing at the foot of her bed, their tiny eyes staring at her with an eerie glow. She tried to scream, but no sound came out, and before she knew it, the dolls had climbed onto her bed, crawling up her legs and over her body. Emily was paralyzed with fear, unable to move as the dolls began to whisper in her ear. Their voices were hushed and sinister, promising to keep her in the dollhouse forever. Emily knew she had to get out, but the dolls were too strong, holding her down with their tiny hands. Days went by, and Emily's family began to grow concerned when she stopped leaving her room. They knocked on her door, but there was no answer. When they finally managed to break the door down, they found Emily lying on her bed, still and lifeless, surrounded by the dolls. The family tried to explain away Emily's death, blaming it on some kind of illness, but they knew deep down that something else had happened. And as the years went on, they heard rumors of the old dollhouse in the attic, whispering tales of the dolls that came alive at night, and the little girl who had been trapped within its walls forever. Years went by, and the old Victorian mansion was passed down to a new family. They too had a young daughter, Maddie, who loved to explore the attic. One day, she stumbled upon the old dollhouse and was immediately enchanted by its charm. But as night fell and Maddie went to bed, she heard strange sounds coming from the dollhouse. At first, she tried to ignore it, chalking it up to the old house settling, but the sounds grew louder and more distinct. It sounded like whispers, but she couldn't make out what the dolls were saying. Maddie grew afraid, but she couldn't bring herself to leave the dollhouse alone. The next night, as Maddie slept, she heard the whispers again. This time, she could make out what the dolls were saying. They were calling out to her, beckoning her to come and play. She tried to resist, but their voices were too strong, pulling her towards the dollhouse. Maddie opened the tiny door to the dollhouse, and to her surprise, the dolls were alive, moving around the rooms and playing together. But as soon as they saw Maddie, they stopped and stared at her with their glassy eyes. Maddie was mesmerized by the dolls, but as she reached out to touch one, it sprang to life, grabbing her hand with its tiny fingers. The other dolls followed suit, crawling over Maddie's body and whispering in her ear. Maddie knew she had to get out, but the dolls were too strong, holding her down with their tiny hands. She screamed and struggled, but it was no use. The dolls were taking her away, into the dark recesses of the dollhouse. Days went by, and Maddie's family searched for her, but they found no trace of her. They were at a loss, until they heard the whispers coming from the old dollhouse. They knew what had happened, and they vowed to never let anyone else fall victim to the cursed dollhouse again. Years went by, and the old Victorian mansion was eventually torn down, but the dollhouse remained, buried beneath the rubble. Its curse lived on, waiting for a new victim to discover its secrets, and for the dolls to come alive once more.